All right, welcome back to another installment of the Wide Right Podcast. I'm Manny Navarro, Miami Hurricanes beat writer for The Athletic. It's Friday, 2 days before Christmas. The Miami Hurricanes have put together one of the best recruiting classes in the country, probably one of the best ever in school history. After a tumultuous, I would say, run of elite recruits, right? Like just going after some of the best in the country, landing 2 5-star, signing 2 5 stars so far. Samson Okunlola, Francis Maungoa. I mean, you can go up and down this list and find blue chip talent all over the place. And Mario Cristobal was certainly happy with that Wednesday when he talked to us. I even asked him a little bit about those loafers that have become his sort of trademark signature throughout the recruiting trail. He gave us a funny answer, but bringing Andrew Ferrelli in because still technically the signing window. The NCAA makes it a 3-day period here in the early signing period, and there's still one big name that's out there, Andrew, and that's Cormani McClain, the number 2 overall recruit in the 247 Sports Composite. I've spoken to a lot of people in the last 48 hours to sort of try to find out any information. I was with Cormani at the state championship games 6 days ago when Lakeland won their state championship here down in Fort Lauderdale. He was doing this the whole time, just running all over the place, doing that the whole time. But yet, still no signature from him. Let's get into it. What can you tell us as far as what's going on with that situation?
Yeah, I mean, obviously a weird situation there. There's a lot of different factors playing into it. I think the biggest thing is first and foremost that a lot of people don't understand is Miami's kind of the one that was like, hey, let's kind of put this on pause for a second. This wasn't Cormani that was like, not sure if I want to sign, if there's other schools. There were just some administrative stuff behind the scenes, whether it was NIL related, grade related, whatever the case may be, where Miami was kind of like a little unsure, had to work some stuff out paperwork wise, and that's what kind of put a pause to this. And then we've seen other schools, whether it's Colorado, Alabama, try to take advantage and get involved there. But I think it's important to understand that from the start, this wasn't something where Cormani was like unsure about signing, didn't want to sign, was holding off. This was something where Miami kind of put a pause to it while they worked through some things on the back end, and then it's just kind of snowballed from there. Um, I have heard, especially I think it's come out that he's not early enrolling, whether it's test scores, grades, whatever it is. Lack of credits. Don't want to get too far into that, but he's not enrolling until the summer, wherever he does decide to sign. So that's another thing that's kind of slowed this recruitment down. I still do believe he signs today, Friday. Um, but now that he's not early enrolling, it does open up the possibility for him to sign further back into that February period, and which would really just kind of restart that whole recruitment. Um, as of right now, as things stand here Friday morning, I still think Miami is the leader there to land him. They still feel confident. I know, obviously Dion's tried to get his attention, has made some calls, has been, promising all these kids revenue splits and all this stuff from the Amazon Prime documentary, which I don't think is going to be what he thinks it is. Um, but I've heard Colorado's not too big of a threat there. It seems like if it were to be anyone else at this point, it would probably be Bama. Alabama did just land Des Ricks, but they was a little bit of, I wouldn't say confidence coming out of Bama from someone I spoke to there yesterday, but definitely they think they're in the picture. As we stand right now, especially if he does sign today and doesn't push it back until February, I'd be very, very surprised if it wasn't anyone but Miami.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of goes in line with what I've been hearing on my end. I stopped by campus Wednesday for the press conference, spoke to some people at Miami, and I think there's just confidence that this is going to get done one way or the other here. I did speak to some people in Lakeland who I know the McLean family and well, and know have sort of followed his career here for the last several years, and I guess the feeling was uh, you know, NIL is obviously a big part of this as well, right? Like all of this is being able to take advantage of what you can now in college football and earn yourself and your family a better life. And so I think part of that can't be discounted, right? Like that's not a factor in all this as well. Once these guys sign and they get on campus, that's when they can start making their money. They can't do it beforehand. So I think the fact that he might actually delay the decision to February, opens the door potentially to other schools getting into this thing. And Alabama was pushing really, really hard. Coach T. Rob, I know, went down to Lakeland High School, and a couple of weeks before signing, they trying to get him to take a visit. Mario was there the same day or like a couple days later to do his on-campus visit, and told basically got, I think, Cormani to stay in, right? Like not to take that extra trip to Alabama, and but they were under a lot of pressure at Alabama to get an elite recruit. And up until yesterday, when they got Desmond Ricks, that was still missing in their class. So, I talked to Damari Brown, who did sign with Miami on Wednesday, and he said he was getting phone calls from T Rob on Tuesday. Up until, and this is supposed to be the dead period, but this is the way things work now in college football, right? You push the envelope all the way up until the end. So I can imagine on Cormani's front, there's a lot, like you said, there's a lot to this. It's not just one simple answer, I think, to why all this has sort of gone on. And I know a lot of people have been wanting answers. And unfortunately, Cormani and it doesn't do a lot of interviews. As I wrote in my story for The Athletic on Saturday, life isn't simple. He wins the state championship, and everybody wants to talk to him about going to Miami, starting the next chapter. Me, Adam Lichtenstein was there, David Wilson from the Miami Herald, all the reporters covering the state championships want to talk to Cormani about Miami, and he whispers to me, says, "I can't. My mom doesn't want me to talk about Miami," and so it's just it sort of becomes like, at that point, my little lights in my head started going off, like, oh my God, I wonder if something's going on here, and unfortunately, it hasn't happened yet. Hopefully, it happens today. If it doesn't, if it doesn't happen as you're listening to the show later on, either on YouTube or on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, just know that these are some of the things going on in the background. I'm glad, Andrew, that you've come on to talk about some of this stuff with me, because it is an important story. I think there's obviously a lot of interest nationwide. But again, I think there's remains a lot of confidence that he's going to be a Hurricane and become the 26th commitment in this class.
Yeah, I would agree 100% with everything you said there. Again, if, for whatever reason it does get pushed back to February, now he's not early enrolling, I think then all bets are off. Basically
Yep.
Another 2 months of 6, 7 weeks of that recruitment being back wide open. But if he does go through and shut it down today, which I think Miami so fully would, I think it'll be Miami. I'd be very surprised if it was anyone else.
And just one thing to sort of clarify, for fans who don't necessarily study this all the time, you don't have to be academically qualified to sign a national letter of intent. There's a lot of guys who still are in the process of waiting for a test score when they sign. I mean, we've seen that happen over the years at Miami, right? Guys will sign and then they won't academically qualify. There'll be a missing transcript, or there'll be something that forces them to, sort of have a delay in getting into Miami, or maybe not getting into Miami at all. So that's not preventing him from signing. That's a choice being made, in my opinion, not to sign for various reasons. So I think that needs to be clarified as well. Andrew, let's talk a little bit about this recruiting class, because it still was one of the best in the country. I thought they addressed a lot of needs, but there still are a lot of needs that have gone unmet. And I sat here yesterday, I broke down the entire roster, sort of just penciling in position by position. Okay, this is who they've got now here. This is who they've got now. This is who's gone. When I did the math, Andrew, I've got Miami right around 82 scholarships. Obviously, you can use up to all 85. You can also get guys preferred walk on and work out other ways to get them to come here. But 82 right now, 40 on offense, 40 on defense, a kicker, and a punter. That's 82. Mario said receiver, defensive tackle are the remaining needs. Now, look, they can obviously still have players enter the transfer portal from here to the end of spring. I also anticipate there'll be some kids graduating that'll be coming off the books as well, guys that haven't been contributors here their whole career. But when you look at this roster, the needs that need to be met specifically on defensive tackle and wide receiver, and maybe even, I would say, safety, because I don't see a whole lot of safeties on this roster. What do you anticipate happening here? Is there anything else that you expect to happen today, or is this going to become, sort of a February signing period, and then, we'll see what happens towards the spring when the transfer window opens again?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all positions that they're going to address in the transfer portal. I know Dante Thornton, the wide receiver from Oregon, is the top transfer wide receiver on their board. He was down here for a while, 2 or 3 day visit. everything went very, very well there. He spent a lot of time with the coaching staff. He's very close with Miami's director of recruiting, Dennis Smith, very close with Mario Cristobal from their time at Oregon. Mario is the one that recruited him in. He's a former four-star, top 75 player in the country, a big body, 6'4", 6'5", exactly the kind of receiver that they're looking for. He did want to take one more visit in January. I didn't get a specific score on where that was that he was going to take that visit. He did want to take one more visit in January, but they do feel very, very good about landing him just based off their previous relationships. And I think that would go a big way to help shoring up that wide receiver and bringing in that big body and Dante Thornton. As for defensive linemen, obviously they got Thomas Gore from
Georgia State.
Georgia State came over. They're still looking for another big bot, like a true big defensive tackle. Gore's only about 5'11", 6', 270. Can be disruptive inside, but they're still looking for that big true defensive tackle, a guy that's built kind of like Horton that they signed, someone that's in that 6'4", 6'5", 300-pound range. That's something I think they'll continue to look for in the portal over the next a couple of weeks, even a couple of months, possibly after spring. Other than that, I mean, I've heard that they're bringing in another transfer cornerback. Wasn't allowed to give a name, but I heard he was a starter at a Big Ten school that was one of the top defensive Big Ten schools. So they're bringing in a quality cornerback from that's has Power 5 starting experience as well. So I think they're still kind of plugging guys in, filling holes where they can in the portal. And as you said, as more guys continue to leave, whether it's through graduation or after spring or whatever the case may be, I think they'll continue to kind of address the roster and see where they need to continue to fill.
Yeah, I think between the transfer portal and graduation, I've got the departures at 28. So I'm sure they used all 85 scholarships last year. Mario's going to do that every single time. He'll figure out how to do the math. But, there's some dead weight on this roster, guys that really, again, haven't played. So there's more than 3 scholarships available by my account. I mean, you can go down the offensive line and pick off some names there. You can certainly look at linebacker, defensive line. There's a lot of edge rushers that are still on this roster, guys that really haven't played much. So there you can use your imagination and go through the list and pick those names out. So I think they could sign anywhere from probably 6 to 8 more guys. Here bringing them in with this class, which would be sort of coincide with the number we were given originally, which was somewhere around 30 to 35, right? They're at 29 additions. If you get Cormani, that's 30. You add another 6 to 8, 36 to 38 new faces. And I got to be honest with you, Andrew, and we'll talk about some of these recruits in a second. This is my early impression. I don't know if they've really addressed a lot of issues, and this could be another tough season around the corner in the sense that you're going to have some growing pains with some guys that haven't played a whole lot. Not that they were great last year. Okay. I'm not saying like, hey, look, you didn't have to do this anyway. Right. But I just think naturally it's hard for true freshmen to come in right away and make a huge impact. And I think Miami fans have to be mentally prepared for, hey, this could be another season of transition, another season where you're still sort of trying to build towards a championship level program where maybe early on in the year things are a little bit of a struggle because you have some young new guys playing that you don't. Now, if you go out into the transfer portal and you get 6 to 8 veteran guys, then maybe my attitude changes. But right now, currently constructed, I mean, you've got 4 transfers and 25 true freshmen coming in. And I guess my question to you is, when you assess this roster and you look at some of the issues that this team had last year, where's your confidence level with them being able to win right away with the changes they've made?
I mean, I think it depends on what you consider winning right away. I don't think this is a team that's going to go out there next year and win, 11 games and, win the ACC or anything like that. But I think you'll definitely see big steps in the right direction. I don't think there's any reason they shouldn't go out there, win 8, 9 games, and at least compete in the Coastal. I think they have done about as good of a job as they can addressing a lot of the needs on the roster. I mean, there was just way too many holes on this team to fill it in one offseason, but I think they've done a good job so far of at least flipping what they can. I mean, we saw this team get just, demolished in the trenches, especially on both sides of the ball, really towards the end of the year. And the top 4 players in this class that have signed so far, not counting Cormani yet, 5 if you include Malik Bryan as an edge rusher, are all trench guys. You've got two 5-star defense, or sorry, two 5-star offensive linemen and Francis Maligo and Samson Akinlola. Those are both guys that can step in and help right away. Obviously, you've got Javian Cohen, who is, an elite offensive lineman, started the last 2 years at Bama, didn't give up a sack in over 1,600 snaps. They've done what they can to shore up that offensive line right away, and I think that'll show throughout the rest of the offense. It'll help the running backs look better, the quarterbacks look more comfortable. So I think that was probably the biggest issue last year, especially offensively, was that offensive line. And I think that's the one spot they've really hammered home the best in this class, and I think it'll make the rest of the offense look better. As for DBs, obviously we saw, especially corner was a big weakness last year. Hopefully you do go ahead and close on Cormani. That helps there a lot. I'm not sure physically how ready he is to compete day one, especially with coming in that June-August window. I don't think he's someone, if he does sign, that you're going to see out there right away. Just needs to add weight, needs to clean some stuff up. I do think Damari Brown is someone that could play right away at that cornerback position. Physically ready, technique he's ready. I think he's someone that you could see, I don't know about starting day one, but definitely getting some playing time from day one. And then also at that cornerback position with his brother Devontae Brown. I was there at American Heritage this past week when there was the whole signing day ceremony for all the Heritage guys. Damari made his commitment, and his brother Devontae was there. That was the first time I had seen Devontae in person. He is a big kid. That's a big corner.
Yeah,
he's listed at 6'2", 185 on UCF's roster, and I would, even if they list him at 6'3", I don't think you get any pushback on that. So I think offensive line and cornerback, they've done a good job of kind of filling some of those needs, whether it's in the portal or just guys that can play right away as freshmen. There are still some holes that are going to be tough, especially at linebacker. Obviously, you have Wesley Basanth coming back. He's going to lead that linebacker room. I know you have Corey Flagg, who's probably the most experienced, but Basanth's going to be that leader of the linebacker room. Francisco Malagoa coming in, he was the top-ranked PFF linebacker transfer, and then a lot of freshmen, but it's still going to be a young and experienced room where I think that's kind of the position where I think you will see some of those growing pains you're talking about. That'll maybe keep them from being that 10-11 win team.
Yeah. I guess more than anything, I'm just trying to preach patience, because I think around here at Miami, we want it so bad, right? We want the Hurricanes to look good so that things turn around quickly. We can be happy. Fans can be happy. Everybody's happy. But, there's a process to this all. And as you flip a roster, there's going to be, one thing I've tried to mention too at different points is, a lot of these guys, high school guys, remember this, Andrew. I mean, they play through injuries, right? Many of these guys end up having, getting seen by the doctors at Miami, and they're like, no, he needs to have surgery. He has a shoulder, a labrum, or so a lot of that stuff can delay some of the progress that you're hoping to make, right? You guys all of a sudden have to miss spring football. That puts them behind. Then they get late break on the workouts. And Mario has made it pretty much a point that, if you're an incoming guy and you need that spring football session, and there's going to be 20 guys, he says, that are going to be coming in, signing in early, I think between transfers and high school kids. So, you're going to get a lot of guys in, but I will warn everybody that's, when everybody sort of asks, Manny, why isn't this guy at a practice? Well, I'll tell you, because he probably had to have surgery on something that nobody realized until he got to Miami, until the school was able to check him out physically and really see, well, does he need to have surgery on this or not? And so, Andrew, let me ask you this. You talked some about the offensive line. I agree with you. I think that's going to be the one area where I think you'll see an immediate difference in terms of talent and ability. And I was basically told, in not so many words, that, Okunlola and Maui Go are two guys that they're going to push really hard to get into that lineup quickly. But on the defensive side of the ball, I think there are some guys too that can help you. I think Ruben Bain physically has the body to come in right away and contribute as a pass rusher. You mentioned his Francisco Mauigoa playing linebacker. I think in the front seven, you'll see some guys, but defensive tackle to me remains something. Have you heard any names? Because I know Miami went after Tunmais Adelier. He picked Michigan State. They've obviously added this kid from Georgia State. But have you heard any names yet through the process besides Thomas Gore, or are there guys maybe that are still haven't decided to enter the portal that they're waiting on?
I know Kalaji Kansi, the defensive tackle from Pitt. They were really, really hoping that he was going to decide to enter the portal instead of going to the NFL draft. If he had entered the portal, I think they felt very good about bringing him home. He's a Miami Northwestern kid. Unfortunately, I believe it was yesterday he actually did go ahead and make that decision to enter the draft. So that was a big hit to what they were hoping to bring in on that defensive line. I think there are still some guys out there that maybe haven't entered the portal yet that they're looking at. Evan Anderson, the big defensive tackle at FAU. He's like a 6'4", 340-pound guy. I think he was second team all conference. He's the guy that they're hoping enters the portal. They can bring him down real easily. So I think it's just one of those positions that they'll continue to monitor. And I think there's a lot of guys that are still, haven't jumped in the portal that will. And guys from big schools, I've heard LSU might have some guys still entering the portal soon. There's some names that'll still be entering the portal over the next couple of weeks, and I think Miami is definitely going to be one of the more active shoppers when it comes to those guys.
All right, let's make some fun predictions here because people are it's just gonna forget about this anyway. But maybe we can come back to this in a couple of years. Who do you think's the most impactful recruit on offense? Who's the most impactful recruit on defense? I want to get your opinion on that.
As a true freshman, I'm probably going to go Francis Mauigoa. He's been, whether it's in a camp setting, I've seen him at in pads at IMG, whatever the case may be, he has been far and away the most impressive recruit I've watched this year. Maybe one of the most impressive offensive line recruits I've ever seen in person. I think he's a kid that walks in, starts at Miami for 3 years, and is probably a first or second round pick after those 3 years, barring injury or anything like that. So I think he is your offensive lineman of the future. He's going to hold down that tackle spot. I think he's from day one for the next 4 years. I think he is the most impactful recruit in this class on offense. Defensively, I think it might be Damari Brown. I think a lot of people are sleeping on him. Obviously, Ruben Bain, I think, can make an impact right away. Jaden Wayne as well. I think those are two guys that can make some impacts on the defensive line early. But I really do think Damari has everything you're looking for in a corner, from size, speed, technique. I think he's someone that's going to play right away, and he may not have as high of a ceiling as Cormani McClain does, just from Cormani's length, his overall speed, everything like that. But I think Damari is a guy that can be a very, very solid corner for Miami from day one for the next 3 or 4 years.
All right, I'm not going to give the same answers as you, so we have a little bit of variety here. I'm going to say on offense, Mark Fletcher. And at the state championship weekend, I trailed him for 4 quarters, and I tweeted this out earlier this week. I don't know how you feel about this, Andrew, if maybe it's an unfair comparison, but there's shades, I want to say shades of Alonzo Highsmith in terms of the leadership that he shows, sort of leading his teammates on the sideline, being a guy that they all come to, and he sort of tells them what he sees. And I see a little bit of protectiveness, the same way you see out of Alonzo, right? Like in terms of, he had a teammate fumble late in that game when they lost to Miami Central. And as soon as the game ended, the first thing he did, he went and put his arm around him and was hugging him and loving him up and just trying to console him. And when he talked to reporters, the first thing out of his mouth was, this guy's going to be a great player. Just the kind of leadership and maturity that I think, to me, screams a Hurricane. It screams a guy who you want in your system, right? That's going to help change the culture a little bit. And take you up to the next level. Plus, I think he's a hellacious physical running back. And when you look at what Mario ideally wants with this offense, Chris Johnson's going to be explosive. He's going to be they're going to be a lightning and thunder sort of tandem for the next couple of years. But I think physically, you look at this backfield, the 5 scholarship players that they have right now, you need Mark Fletcher to play because Trevante Citizen is coming off a major knee injury. You don't know where he's going to be health-wise. And I think there's the chance, and Mark told me he's healthy. He's not banged up, even though he just ran like 800 times for 1,900 yards and was carrying guys on his back. Physically, he's ready to roll. So I think he's the kind of guy who could come in here and carve out a role, be the kind of big physical back that Mario wants. And maybe he doesn't lead the team in rushing. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying he's going to do that as a true freshman. But you think back to Alonzo Highsmith and the effect that he had when he first got to Miami in 1983, I think he's the kind of guy that can help Miami recruit guys down the road because he's well liked.
Yeah, definitely. No, and obviously, as you touched on the physical aspect of him, he's an incredible running back, great size, very slipped on for his speed and his ability to make guys miss at that size. But yeah, just one of the best players I've been around, best from a personal standpoint, one of the best teammates have been around. I mean, for 7-on-7, he didn't really play. He was our long snapper. He just kind of tossed the ball back to the quarterback because 7-on-7 is not really a sport for a 6'2", 230, 240-pound running back. But he would come to everything with us just because he was so well liked. He was the best teammate you could ask for. Is that, so close to everyone on the team. Everyone loved him. He's definitely a guy that's gonna just help the locker room come together and also be able to recruit other guys from the area that come along in the next 2, 3, 4 classes.
I got a chance to attend an event Wednesday night after the signing day festivities where a lot of the local high school recruits, including Mark and a bunch of Miami guys, I think there were 7 or 8 Miami guys there, Frankie Tinalau, Ray Joseph, Ruben Bain, a lot of these guys were down there, Mark Fletcher, and those guys, they had a pretty strong bond, right off the bat. They were hanging out together, talking together. And I think, Mario talked about this in his press conference that he wants to change the culture and sort of bring in guys that really want to be Hurricanes, guys that want to be here, not put up with the crap that he kind of had to put up with in year one. And I know NIL is going to make that a challenge, Andrew, because let's face it, every one of these guys wants to get paid. There's different reasons why they'll get paid. Some guys may not get paid. That could be an issue down the road, but at least I think at their core, um, these are guys that want to be Miami Hurricanes, that some of them that love each other, know each other for a long time. So hopefully that helps galvanize this locker room so that you don't have some of the issues that Texas A&M went through this past season. I think, as talented as they were, there's no question that some of that NIL stuff crept in there and caused some problems. And it sometimes it can be tough to overcome, and we're just sort of learning about this stuff now because this is all brand new to the college football game the last couple of years, where NIL is out there front and center and it's legal and it's not hidden behind the scenes, and so it's a conversation now that everybody has to have. You can't ignore it. So I'm hoping that plays a role. As far as my defensive player, obviously I love Ruben Bain. I think he's going to come in and make an instant impact. But to be a little bit different here, this is one of my favorite players in the class, and I don't think, maybe some people feel as strongly, but I think Bobby Washington, the linebacker, I watched him play some in 7-on-7, and there's just something about his attitude, about wanting to knock guys out, wanting to not being afraid of anything, the confidence that he has. You look at that linebacker position at Miami, and I know everybody loves Wesley Bissainthe. They think he's going to be a great player at Miami. Popo Aguirre will probably be very, very good too. But there's something about Bobby Washington, his size, his intelligence, his moxie, that makes me feel like this is a guy who's going to have a good career at Miami.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, he's got that combination of size and speed that you want. He's probably about 6'2", 6'3" now, still growing. Runs legit 4.4, 4.5 at that size. I think the biggest thing with him, they've probably got to put on another 15, 20 pounds. He's maybe around 210 right now. I think they'll probably want to get him up to about 6'3", 225. So I think if he can get in early, especially in January, I believe he is early enrolling. Get acclimated to the weight program, everything like that, get in shape. I think he's definitely a kid that could help out early. Both Bobby and Robbie, they're two kids that honestly, from just being around them, talking to them, doesn't seem like they've ever been in like the true weight program. They've never had like that real strength and conditioning, anything like that. They're just kind of naturally like that. So I think it's going to be fun to watch them get to Miami, get in that weight program, and see what they can really turn into.
All right, Andrew. So I asked for some mailbag questions, and I want us to be able to dive into that here. Kind of help us sort of navigate the show from here on out. Maybe some of these questions aren't good. I'm kind of reading through them one by one, but if one of them sucks, well, sorry, we'll skip ahead to the next one. We apologize. This one I actually like. This is from Samuel Dumarque on Twitter. He says, "How many classes have to be like this before expectations change?" I'm going to answer first. You can provide your thoughts right after, Andrew. But I think you need 3 classes before you can really three great classes before you can really have the kind of championship winning depth that you need. Now, how many do you need to make a 12-team playoff? I don't think you need that many. I think you could get away with one or two really good classes if you load up in the transfer portal. But as far as winning a championship, getting to that Alabama, Georgia, um, Ohio State, Clemson type level, you probably need to stack three great classes because you're going to have misses. You're going to have guys that enter the portal. You're going to have guys that get injured. So you need the depth if you're really going to make a run at a championship.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think three is a solid number. I think right now with the way the transfer portal is, with the way NIL is, everything like that, I think you could probably do it in two. I mean, if you're flipping, 40 kids in a year, basically in 2 years, you could have a whole new roster.
Right.
Obviously, you'd still be a little young at that point, so that may be where that third year comes in. But I think in 2 years, you could really put together a team that could compete, for 10, 11, 12 wins with ease.
Right. This is from Brian Haley _Brian Haley on Twitter. Amazing class this year. How are the Canes poised in 2024, particularly at receiver? People can't get enough of this recruiting stuff, man. Andrew, obviously we've got the two local guys, the 5 stars, JJ and JoJo Trader. But when you look at this class, besides those two guys at receiver, any early thoughts on who they might be targeting? And maybe other positions that you see as sort of key guys in the 24 class for Miami?
Obviously, the first part of that question, just how they continue this going into 24. I think if you win, it gives you a lot better chance to keep these guys home. I mean, coming off a 5-7 season and sitting here with a top 5 class is incredible. Not sure how sustainable that is. I think you've got to start seeing that progress on the field, and then if you combine that with what Miami's doing from just the recruiting guys they have on staff, with Mario's intensity as a recruiter, with what they're doing from the NIL standpoint, I think that's when you'll really see this recruiting ball continue to roll and pull in those top 3, top 5 classes consistently. At receiver next year, obviously, the 2 5-stars, JJ and JoJo, from Chaminade. Jeremiah Smith, he did go ahead and commit to Ohio State, but we're well outside of a year until he signs when he made that commitment. So I think there's still a lot of room to work there. Outside of those two guys, Chance Robinson's another big target. He's a top 100 receiver, high 4-star kid from St. Thomas Aquinas. He's a kid, I know him, know his dad. Both of them are big UM fans. I think that's a kid mine will have a very good chance at landing next year. And then just some receivers outside of South Florida. Mazio Bennett's a kid that they really, really like. He's a 4-star. He's out of South Carolina. He'll actually be down here for the Raw 7-on-7 tryouts. He'll be playing with us this year. He'll be spending a lot of time down here in Miami. So I think that's a kid they really like. And then also Ryan Wingo. He's one of the top-rated receivers in the country. I think those are probably the top 5 on their receiver board going forward.
Any other big-time local kids that you think that have to become priorities at other positions?
Oh, yeah. I mean, 24 class, they definitely have to hammer home a lot of the local kids. Obviously, we touched on the 2 5-stars, JJ and Jeremiah. Those are going to be the 2 kind of focal points of this class in the state. But also, you've got TJ Capers at Columbus. He's a 5-star, ranked as kind of an edge outside linebacker. He's about 6'2", 230, so he's a little bit in between. That's going to be a big kid to try to keep home. You've got not as local, but Ellis Robinson. He's the #1 cornerback in the country. He's at IMG. Someone that I know Adai has already started to build a good relationship with. Ellis will be down here a lot for 7-on-7. Those are probably 2 key guys. And then also Zaquan Patterson. He's another top 100 guy, also at Chaminade with JJ and JoJo. He's a kind of a linebacker, safety, a little bit of a tweener there as well. Those are some top guys that we'll definitely have to work to keep home next year and hopefully build the foundation of this class around.
We got a lot of time before then, guys. We got a lot of time to talk 2024 for between here and then. And Mario's all over it already. I mean, they have basically been recruiting that for months now and doing their homework and doing everything, which kind of leads into our next question. This is from David Engelson on Twitter, David_Engelson. One thing I've noticed from Cristobal's commitments is that they don't make a spectacle out of their recruiting process / announcements. I know we're hardwired to look at the star rating system, but how much does a recruit's mentality factor into Mario's recruiting process? I think without question, Mario is looking for guys who have the right kind of personality, the right kind of fit. There's no question that there are psychology tests being done by Mario when he has these conversations, and he talks to them. I'll put it to you this way: he talks to them more than any head coach probably does, between texting and everything else. I've heard that across the board from all the recruits. Again, I spoke to a bunch of them Wednesday night. All of them talk about how important Mario puts a factor on leadership and being good people and all that kind of stuff, what he looks for. And he talked about it. I think a lot of this, he mentioned this several times in his press conference, Andrew, but getting these guys on campus for camps, right? Being able to physically see them with his own eyes, on campus, go through drills that they want them to go through, and then talking to them and talking to them. I think without question, look, does he care about recruiting rankings? Yes. There's no question Mario cares about recruiting rankings, right? Like every coach has their passion for Mario. It's important to him. He came from the Jimmy Johnson era, played for Jimmy here. Talent acquisition is a big thing to him. But I also think what matters even more is the DNA of these guys, their mindset. And so, yes, I agree 100% that that's something he's doing. Any other insights into that from you?
Yeah, I totally agree. That's something they look a lot at. It's part of what Alonzo Highsmith does a lot in his role. Is just talking to these guys, trying to get a feel for them personally, if they're a good fit for this program, whether it's from just being a hard worker, humble, everything that they're looking for. If they're just a good fit for this locker room, to kind of avoid what we saw this year. I think there was a lot of guys that were on this past roster that wouldn't have been on this roster if Mario was here, simply because of them just personality wise, how they are off the field. I think it's definitely something Mario and the staff focus on, is not only getting guys that are great football players, but guys that fit what Mario is trying to do here from a program standpoint, building the program and just getting the right mentality in this locker room.
All right, this is from David Hernandez, D Hernan on D Hernan _ on Twitter. Do you see Miami dipping more into the portal or into the high school ranks with the NCAA blanket waiver of the official visits for this period? I'll let you answer that one.
I think that's definitely something that's going to go towards being used in the portal. I think high school pretty much, except for Cormani, it seems like pretty much all the top guys there are pretty much signed. That's been taken care of. But it's definitely going to be something that they do take advantage of in the portal. I know Miami was running pretty tight towards the end of this cycle when it came to number of visits and things like that. So that's definitely a big waiver for them to go ahead and pass through. And it's something they're going to take advantage of in the portal, because this portal class continues. There's still guys, like I said, that are going to be jumping in this portal. The window opens up. It's still open right now for a little bit longer, and then opens up again after spring. So they're going to continue to attack that portal and do everything they can to continue to flip this roster before next season.
I do think that they're still looking at whatever high school guys might be out there that haven't signed yet. I don't think it's completely closed on the high school front. If they can find somebody, maybe a hidden gem, or somebody that they really like, that they think could be a late arrival, even. I agree with you. I think the majority of the focus is the transfer portal, because you need experience. But I would say I don't think they've completely ruled it out, in my opinion, based on one conversation that I had Wednesday as I was leaving the building. All right, this is from Chris Griffin, C Griffin 325 on Twitter. What are your thoughts on Andrew Ivins labeling Miami a loser on early signing day? I know this became a controversial story on the internet, and you went Ivins, who, by the way, I've known Ivins now a couple of years. We did a couple of podcasts together when I was working with Big O and doing the show for him at night. Andrew came in several nights. Great. I loved working with Andrew. I think one thing people don't realize, and I'm a journalist, I have to do this job every day. And I want your thoughts on this, Andrew. But I think people don't realize that there's a lot of pressure and a lot of responsibility to just produce content constantly. And sometimes you may not do all your homework. There's a lot of people on TV who don't have the opportunity to do all of their homework. Did he make a mistake calling Miami a loser? Yes. But I also think, had he been given a little bit more time to think, he probably doesn't make that mistake.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I know Andrew as well. He's a great guy. He lives down here. Definitely no animosity towards UM or anything like that. I think he was explaining it on the Joe Rogan show. He was saying that he was on TV doing shows and everything for pretty much 8 hours straight. They gave him a piece of paper, said, "Here, write down your winners and your losers." Put his winners, put his losers. At that point, Miami and Cormani were still up in the air as it is today, so we just kind of put a question mark there. And he's like, next thing he knows, it's on a graphic. His Twitter's getting blown up. He really wasn't thinking, anything of it at that point. But he did explain, a little bit in the article as well, if they went through and read it, that the signing class as a whole was a big win for Miami. Obviously, top 5 class in the country, one of the top classes Miami's pulled in a long time. Was it maybe a little disappointing on signing day to some people that they didn't go out and flip someone? They were working to flip Hakeem Williams, Reef Denson, kids like that. And then obviously Cormani didn't go ahead and sign. I guess if you want to look at it that way, you can kind of try to put them on that side of things. But I think it was just something that was kind of done in the moment, did it real quickly, like he said. It wasn't meant to blow up as them being this big loser on signing day. Maybe looking back, I don't think you would necessarily put them in that loser category if you knew what the graphic was going to look like when it was put out.
Yeah. Again, this is an easy job to do. I've been covering Colorado now, recruiting. I'm helping out on a bunch of Deion Sanders stories. My focus isn't always on Miami. We spend a lot of hours doing this. I mean, 12, 14, 16-hour days, just doing research, calling, talking to people, doing podcasts with you and Carlos Ledo and everybody else, dealing with guys like Kelvin Harris on Twitter, who, by the way, loves to bash me on Twitter. But if I showed you my phone, the amount of missed calls that I have from Kelvin, you'd laugh. We're actually good friends. He just likes playing the heel like in WWE online with everybody. So for those of you wondering, no, Kelvin Harris and I are friends. He's not being he's having some fun with everybody on Twitter. But yeah, this is a tough job, and sometimes under pressure, you kind of just you have things that you say that maybe you're not prepared to say. So I would not jump down our friend Andrew Ivins too hard. I think, yes, did he make a mistake? Absolutely. I just want to point out, I wrote my Cormani column on Wednesday at 12 o'clock when he didn't sign. And I put it out there saying, regardless of whether or not Cormani signs, in my opinion, this is a good day for the University of Miami. They signed a great class. One player will not spoil it. And I'll say this again, like you said earlier, Andrew, they can go out and get somebody in the portal and find that 5-star cornerback next year if he doesn't sign. So this, I would say this over and over again. There's no way Miami's a loser with the job that Mario did coming off of a 5-7 season. It's not even close. This is a huge victory for them, and that needs to be respected in that way. All right, a couple more questions, and then we'll finish this thing up here. This is from David David P. Sims on Twitter. How many more roster spots do we have open at the moment? Obviously, things can change with the spring portal dates. I said this earlier in case you missed it. My count 82, which means 3 scholarships. But again, it's going to fluctuate because there are guys that are either going to graduate and be asked nicely to leave, or guys that are going to just be taken off scholarship because Mario can do that. Mario's allowed to do that the first 18 months on the job. So if he can find help elsewhere, he will. I don't think this is much of an issue.
Yeah, the numbers will always work themselves out. If they need to make space because they think there's people that can come in and help this team, they will find a way to do it.
All right, this is from Armando, and I wish I could pronounce this last name. It's YZA Gire. So I'm going to say Izagire. What statement did Mario make to the other Florida and ACC schools with their class this year?
I think a big statement. I think especially when it comes to the other Florida schools and other ACC schools, they definitely did a good job of keeping these South Florida kids home. I think I put a couple tweets out yesterday about Dade and Broward County. I think there was 9 4- and 5-star prospects in Dade County. Miami got 4 of them. I believe FSU and Florida only got 1. And then in Broward, there was 10 4- and 5-star prospects in Broward, and Miami got 4 of them. FSU got 2, and Florida didn't land a single one. So I think they did a good job keeping some of the in-state schools out of South Florida. University of Florida only signed 1 player from Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach, being Andy Jean. So I think they did a good job kind of keeping UF out of down here. Honestly, the biggest issue right now is Georgia. Georgia came into the state, took 7 of the top 20 guys from the state of Florida. I think that's something that Miami's got to compete against, is trying to keep some of those guys home. Obviously, with what Georgia's put together on the field, that's difficult. Miami's got to start winning if they want to get to that level. But in terms of how they competed against other schools in conference and in state, they did a really good job of locking a majority of those guys home that they were in battles with against those in-state teams.
Yeah, I agree. And look, the number one class in the ACC, I would say from a conference perspective, the ACC is there for the taking. And if Miami can continue to stack again, multiple classes on top of one another, I really think that, this is an opportunity to sort of rise quickly to the top of the conference. I will say this, Andrew, and I know this won't make Miami fans happy. I think Florida State might have the best team in the ACC next year. Um, the fact that they've got their quarterback coming back, the fact that they always seem to do well in the transfer portal. Mike Norvell and his staff do a good job. I don't want to crap on Florida State by any means whatsoever, because I know some people they're saying, oh, their class isn't as good as Miami's. You got to give them credit. They've turned this thing around in year 3. They were 9-3. Look, I'm not saying Florida State's winning the national championship. I don't think they're anywhere close to that either. But I think they could be good enough to beat Clemson and win the conference next year. I just will say that. And that'll help them on the recruiting trail if they can have a season like that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with a lot of what you said there. They probably have the most talented, if not second most talented roster coming back. They were able to keep a lot of guys that had good years. The one thing I will say is we even saw under Manny, when you try to really build your team through the portal instead of through high school recruiting, sometimes it does lead to some issues just with guys coming in for a year, being out for a year, just being thrown in. So we'll see if there leads to any issues there. I think they do need to pick things up from a high school recruiting standpoint. I think this year could be kind of, I think if they're going to make a run, it's got to start this year, because I think once Jordan Travis leaves, you can say what you want about him. He's not the best passer, this and that. He has made, big strides, and he is very dangerous as a college quarterback with what he can do with his legs and everything like that. I think they take a big step back after he leaves. So I think if they're going to make a run and start to really make a push in high school recruiting and everything like that, it's got to be this 2023 season and that's 2024 recruiting class.
All right. This is from Ruben Valorio on it's RUB Valorio on Twitter. Are we sticking with Gaddis, or do you think we're just waiting for the recruiting class to be solidified to make a change? Any other coaching shifts or changes? It's an interesting topic because Mario obviously is trying to finish up the recruiting class. Here's what I'll tell everybody about coaching changes. Okay. And I've said this on my Big O appearances, and we'll probably repeat it again because Big O asks me every time I come on the show, what's happening with the coaching staff. Think back to last year. Just think back to the most immediate, Mario comes in, he's got to hire new staff. A big influence in all this is the NFL, right? Like there's guys that you may be targeting to bring in. And so the NFL season is still going. The regular season won't end for another 3 weeks. There's 3 games left before the end of the season. Guys are going to be interviewing for like I think this thought process of you fire and just hire somebody else, people don't realize contractually there's deals, right? You have to finish out the rest of your contract, otherwise they got to pay you to go away. There's so many different factors in this that I think people want instant results. I don't think Mario is pushing. He's not a guy who's ever going to just push through this process and just fire a guy. I think, a lot of political factors in this, right? He spent a lot of money hiring these guys after 1 year to just fire them and get rid of them doesn't make him look good, Andrew. So there's a process to this all. I would just tell people, I think there's a lot of belief there will be a change at the offensive coordinator position. There's a lot of belief there may be a couple of assistants who head elsewhere. But I'll also say I don't think this is going to be a clean swipe across the board with the coaching staff. What are your thoughts? What are you hearing with that?
I was told shortly after the year to expect a lot of changes, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Those seem to have died down as we've been getting more and more into recruiting. We'll see now that that signing day has passed if some of those things start to come to fruition. But again, I think it's. I mean, like you said, we saw with Mario's hiring process last year. It's not something that he just does on a whim. He kind of, it almost annoyed some people last year with how long he was taking to make some of those decisions, but just how he is when it comes to that. He's very specific. So I think time will tell. But I do know as of when the season was ending, before everyone got so, involved in recruiting and everything like that with signing day, and that became the main focus. I was told to expect some changes on the offensive side of the ball when it came to the staff.
And that's similar to what I've heard throughout this process. I think again, just does somebody get fired? Probably not. Does somebody leave? Yes. I think that's the way things potentially play out here. This is a couple more here, and then we're going to wrap this thing up. I've said that twice now. When does Cormani have to sign to be eligible for early enrollment? This is from Let's Be Jerks. I love the name on Twitter. First of all, I think you and I can agree. We don't think he's enrolling early at this point, right?
No, Cormani won't be an early enrollee. Just some stuff with test scores and stuff that they're still working through. He'll be a summer enrollee.
All right. This is from
this where he signs.
Right. This is from Drop Dog 72. Have you spoken to any offensive skill guys in this class about their thoughts on Gaddis's offense? It's funny. I really haven't, because I guess in the back of my mind, I thought there would be some change anyway. I can tell you this from my conversations with a lot of guys. I asked them, how tough was it to stomach that 5-game losing streak at home, and be there in person. A lot of the local guys on Wednesday all told me it sucked, because you're sitting there watching the team you want to play for get destroyed. But I think at the same time, they also felt a sense of responsibility. Like, okay, I've got to go here and change it. And again, this comes back to what we talked about before. DNA, do you want to be a Hurricane? Do you want to see different results? I think a lot of these kids, they can't give you an honest assessment of what they think of an offense until they're in it, until they start learning the playbook, until they're participating in it. And in the end, a lot of them will just talk to you about the way that they think their role is on the team and whether or not they think they're doing a good job. I don't think too many guys get deeply involved in breaking down X's and O's unless they're a quarterback.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. I didn't want to ask too many of them about it because I didn't want to scare them away when they started thinking about it. But yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, the biggest thing with this class is they sat there and watched, Miami lose these 5 straight home games, not really be competitive in any of them, and they still felt like they wanted to be here. They wanted to come in here and change things. They felt comfortable with the systems they were seeing. So I think that's the biggest thing, is that it's just kids that want to be here. They're not coming here for other reasons. They're coming here, and if people want to say NIL this, NIL that, when you're that high quality of player, you can go get paid wherever. These are a lot of these kids wanted to be here. They wanted to come help get this fixed. And I think that's the biggest thing with this class. So we'll see. Hopefully it turns into them being able to come in and get that done.
Mark Houston, Eric, Billy G, Matthew, Utah, and then Cuddy Bag, all people who asked questions. I'm sorry we ran out of time, but we basically covered, from me reading over your questions here, we covered a lot of this stuff as far as recruiting class, coaching changes, all that kind of stuff. We hit on these subjects. So hopefully you got your answers. Andrew, thanks for coming on and doing this show with me once again. Andrew, of course, works with the Raw 7-on-7 team here based out of South Florida. You guys are going to start getting going here in early January. I just went to go see your former team last week, and I stopped by. They had a t-shirt for me. They wanted me to wear. I actually wore it to Mario's press conference. So now I got to get a Raw 7-on-7 for equal balance. I don't want people to think I'm favoring one 7-on-7 team over the other. When in reality, I just love going and watching these kids play and getting to know them. So at some point, you got to hook me up, brother.
We will definitely make sure you're hooked up with all the latest gear. We've got some great sponsorships and stuff coming in from the apparel side that we'll be announcing soon.
All right, should be exciting. You guys get going here. The early first week of January, I think, is when you have some of these camps, etc., things that you guys are going to be doing, and then of course games right around the corner. I think second and third weekend in January we'll already have tournaments here locally going on. Battle Miami will be a big one. The opening tournament where everybody across the country seems to come down for that one. So there'll be plenty of recruiting coverage, a lot of recruiting coverage in the Athletic. If you aren't already subscribed, please do. I'm very close to hitting my my benchmark for the year with subscriptions. So I think I'm only about 5 or 6 away. So if you're watching this and you want to be nice to me on Christmas, sign up for the Athletic. I will. This is my begging. I will wrap it up with that. Andrew, any final thoughts here as we wrap up the Christmas season on Cormani, or anything else on your mind?
No, I mean, I guess with Cormani as the exception, just glad that everything here is pretty much wrapped up with signing day. These last couple weeks have been a lot. Happy for these players. I know it's been a lot on them as well. Talked to Mark Fletcher about it, and he was just saying how how relieved he is for it to all be done, how it's just a big weight off his shoulders. And, now he can just kind of focus on working out, focus on football, school, getting ready. And I think that's the way most of these guys feel. So I'm sure they're all happy that, the process has come to a close as well.
All right. So as we wrap this up, 5 minutes to 10 a.m., I know as soon as we hang up and we finish this phone call, Cormani's going to sign with Miami, and it's going to be a big deal, and everybody's going to go bananas. And so if that happens, we apologize. We recorded a little too early for you, but we tried to hold out as long as we could. Andrew's busy. I'm busy. It's the Christmas season. There's a lot of stuff to get going. We will be back with the Wide Ride podcast soon. Thank you for listening today. Andrew, thank you again. Make sure you follow Andrew on Twitter. Give him your Twitter address. I want people to know where you're at.
It's just my first name _ last name. So Andrew, ANDREW _ Ferrelli, FERRELLI.
And you can follow me on Twitter at Manny _ Navarro. Thanks for watching. We'll be back soon.